Hi guys, in this video I'll be recapping 90 Day Fiancé The Other Way, Season 7, Episode 10. If you enjoy recaps of reality shows like 90 Day Fiancé and Love is Blind, please like, comment, and subscribe, and check out my other videos and playlists. We'll start with Jenny and Sumit. They're in a car with Sumit's parents driving to the cafe they're going to run. The mom says she'll be making bread rolls and asks what Jenny will be doing. Jenny says she'll be making coffee. The mom says, "Only coffee?" Sumit says coffee can be the star of the cafe, and the mom gives the dad a look. In Sumit's confessional, he says most people in India drink chai, but some drink coffee, and that the coffee machine they bought that grinds beans and makes espresso will be unique to the area and can attract a lot of customers. They're talking about how tight the cafe space is, and Sumit suggests they have a schedule where only a few people are in the space at any time. We see they got their cafe logo sign, which Sumit puts up. In her confessional, Jenny says the cafe is coming together, and they're just putting the final touches on it. In his interview, Sumit says the owner of the property will be doing a ceremony to open the cafe. He adds that the people who are coming the next day will be their first customers. While they're cooking, Sumit asks his dad to get some water. His dad goes to the bathroom to get it from the tap there. Sumit comes in and says that water is unfiltered and right next to the toilet, so it can't be used. He tells his mom they can't use the food she cooked. He says to his parents, "Don't you know you can't use bathroom water?" The mom argues that everyone uses water from there and tells him to shut up and that he's insulting her. In the parents' confessional, the dad says that the workers there told him they used the water from the bathroom, so he was just doing what they said. The mom agrees and said they told her they clean their utensils there. She tells Sumit they don't have a water system there, and he should have taken care of it beforehand. Then they show Sumit throwing out the food his mom cooked. In his interview, he admits the fault is his too. He says they're planning to open tomorrow, but asks how that will be possible with no water to prepare the food. It's the day of the opening, and they're headed back to the cafe where they'll have the blessing ceremony in the morning. He tells his parents he felt awful about throwing out the food they worked so hard cooking. He says it's not a great way to start their day, and says they'll be handing out food samples at the ceremony, but that it won't be easy because they're tired from working so hard the night before. He tells his parents he has a water jar if they need it. In his interview, he explains that the Sundarkand ceremony is when they ask the Indian gods and goddesses for blessings. He says this blessing is especially helpful because it's taking place on a special day when the planets and stars are aligned, and this will bring more blessings. Jenny's sister-in-law shows her how to use the coffee machine. In her confessional, she says she's in over her head with the coffee machine. She's not sure if she can do it. The sister-in-law says Jenny needs to be faster. Jenny says she already forgot what to do. The blessing starts, and the priest is sprinkling what Sumit later explains as holy water mixed with cow urine around the cafe. In his interview, he explains that cow urine is considered religious and pure in his culture, and that cows are a holy animal. Jenny says throwing cow urine around while cooking would never be done in the U.S. Now with their cafe having been blessed, they're outside trying to share samples with the locals and getting the word out. Everyone's working hard cooking and running out food, but Jenny's just standing around with a sour expression. I thought she was supposed to be making coffee, and maybe she did, but they never showed it. Instead, they just showed scenes of her standing around doing nothing. But after the event is over, the family's excited and talking about how it went. But Jenny tells them she's not seeing any money coming in, and that they put out a lot of food. Sumit explains that they're letting people know that they're new to the area. Her sister-in-law explains that local businesses have been in the area for years, so they have to be able to compete with them. They tell her this is an investment. I didn't think they put out that much food, and it seemed like decent amounts for an opening event. Maybe she just doesn't realize it, but this kind of thing is done a lot with new restaurants. But it was pretty annoying for Jenny to not only be standing around the whole night while everyone else worked, but to give such annoying feedback afterwards. Also, she must have known the plan ahead of time, so why voice her concerns after the fact? In her interview, she says she's worried they won't make money, and they'll have to live with Sumit's family forever. That's something else I'm curious about. If you look up Jenny and Sumit on Instagram, they have over 350,000 followers. So I'm wondering why they aren't leveraging that following into brand deals and other ways of making money. It seems like they could be more successful if they focused on that rather than things like a cafe. When they first launched the idea of the cafe, I actually thought it was a fake storyline, along with the idea that they were broke, since they have such a large Insta following, and I was sure they were making money with that. But maybe they just aren't good with harnessing that into something lucrative. The cafe does seem to be a real thing, since they really seem to be working hard at it. We'll see how things go next time we catch up with them. Moving on to Pattiya and Dylan. They're going furniture shopping to find something to sit on for Dylan's empty-ass house. In their confessional, Pattiya says she looks for quality, comfort, and durability. Dylan says she needs to look at the price tag too, but she says she can't help she has expensive tastes. She's eyeing a couple of couches that are over $2,000, but Dylan is suggesting a couch closer to $1,000 and says she could use some of that money to tackle her debt. He explains how the interest keeps adding up. In his confessional, he says she's reckless with money, that when they lived in Vegas, she'd go on shopping sprees and drop $5 to $10K. He said she'd go into a clothing store and the clerks loved her and would bring her one in every color for each item she liked, and that if she has money, she'll spend it. I thought it was funny they had old pictures of Pattiya trying on clothes. He asks what her actual debt amount is, and she says $20K. He asks how many credit cards she's maxed out, and she says all 5 of them. He asks how that happened. She says she had no debt when she went to Thailand, but when she came back, she accumulated more debt because she had to start over. She says to him, "This is your fault." In her confessional, she says when she first met Dylan, she had a lot of debt, but she worked hard and was able to pay it off. But then she moved to Thailand to be with him, and they broke up 11 months later, and she had to move back to the US and start over. She says she hadn't been working in Thailand and had no savings and felt at her lowest at that point. And she has a lot of resentment regarding the situation because she sacrificed a lot for him. He says he understands some of it was maybe his fault, but that it was 4 years ago, and she's been dancing for 4 years making money, and the issue keeps coming up. He asks if she's changed. She says yes, she's not the same and has learned, and that's why she's asking him to sell his house to help with her debt. This surprised me, and I really thought it was out of line for her to ask him to do this. He says he's scared if he sells one of his properties, there'll be something else that comes up. In his interview, he says he owns a couple properties in the area, but doesn't feel like selling one of them is the solution, and that she doesn't take any accountability. He says it's crazy she blames him for the Thailand situation, since she's been spending this way her whole life. That when he met her, he thought she had lots of money, but it turned out she had $60K in debt, so this is a pattern, and he doesn't always want to clean up her mess. He says she keeps asking for a ring, and the main reason he hasn't committed to this yet is because of her spending issues. In their confessional, Dylan says she has an addiction. He says it's brought him to tears because she wouldn't stop spending, and he says there were lots of times she didn't have money for rent and he had to help out. She tells him, "You put me in that place." He says she has a deluded view of what happened. She says she didn't realize deep down how he felt about this. I'm surprised at that, because he said nonstop since they appeared on our screen that he's concerned about her spending. He says in the past when he expressed his concerns, she'd get mad, and it would start a fight and he'd give up. She again tells him she accumulated the debt because of him. He asks about the debt she had when they first met, who was responsible for that. In her interview, she says when she met him, she just moved to Vegas and did have a lot of debt. She explains that as a performer, she had to look the part with tanning and getting her nails and hair done in order to be successful, but that she doesn't spend like she used to. She tells him she's learned from her mistakes, but her recent debt is his fault, but says now that they're together, it will be his money, so she won't be doing that. In her interview, she says she's mad because this latest debt was because of him, and if he cares about her, he should help her, and that it's almost like he likes to see her suffer. She says she's not sure what more she can do to convince him, and he needs to move past this, and that if he doesn't propose, she's done. I really liked Pattiya when we were first introduced to her. She seemed nice and laid back, and I liked her outlook and sense of humor. But I was surprised at how she put the blame for her recent debt on Dylan. Anyone going into a relationship is taking a chance. So for her to say it was entirely his fault it didn't work out, and that she wound up in debt because of that, is a strange conclusion. She should have planned for that possible outcome regardless. I'm not a huge fan of Dylan either. I don't like his fussiness with food, and I'm sure his weird relationship with his mom will be annoying. But at least right now, I don't think it's fair for Pattiya to put the blame for her debt on him. In the preview for the next time we see them, it looks like Pattiya will have a run-in with the mom, so that should ramp things up. Hi guys, just a reminder to please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks! Now we're with Luke and Madelein. Luke is meeting his friend Brian at a local bar. In his confessional, he explains that Brian is one of his closest friends. They met in Colombia, and Brian was married to one of Madelein's friends. And Madelein and Brian hate each other. They show a previous clip where Brian is saying Madelein started a rumor that he was unfaithful to his ex-wife, just because he told Luke about an incident that happened with Madelein and another guy when Luke wasn't there. In Luke's confessional, he says Madelein doesn't want him to see Brian, but he needs to talk to a friend. He explains to Brian how things have been going with Madelein recently, how she called off the wedding, but they're trying to work through it. Brian says that sounds healthy, and that it's like Stockholm Syndrome. Luke doesn't know what this is, so Brian explains. Luke says they've been through a lot together, and that they might have a trauma bond. Brian says Luke is manipulated and controlled, and asks why he wants to be with her. Luke says he's scared of being alone, and she's been there for him. Brian's like, "She's there for you? Lots of times you tell me she won't talk to you." He says, "You're getting married. How is this a good idea?" and says Luke doesn't have to go through with this. Luke admits he's not happy now and feels he's walking on eggshells, but says the way she makes him feel when he's with her is worth it. Brian asks, where's the root of your financial problems? And asks how much money is spent on Madelein in a year. In his confessional, Brian says any woman will love you if you give her enough money, and that a real woman who knows you're having financial problems shouldn't push the limits of what you can do. In his interview, Luke says what Brian's saying is hard to hear, but has some truth to it. He says this isn't the relationship he envisioned, and he's not sure what to do. How about not dating a teenager, sir? Now we're with Greta and Matthew. Greta is having tea with Matthew's mom, his grandma, and his brother's fiancé. In her confessional, she says since arriving there, things have been up and down, and she and Matthew are on different pages about everything. Matthew's mom is really nice and tells Greta she's welcome in the house and in the family for however long she stays there. She adds that she told Matthew she thinks Greta's his soulmate, and this makes Greta tear up. The grandma says for the past 2 years, their family has had amazing Christmas holidays, and she's happy Greta will be joining them for future ones. Greta tells a sad Christmas story about her life growing up. She says one Christmas that she, her mom, and her sister made homemade ornaments for the tree. She says after her mom passed away, they were decorating the tree, and her new stepmom said the ornaments were ugly. She says one of her first memories was trying to hide the ornaments in the tree so the stepmom wouldn't mess with them, but says ultimately the stepmom threw them away. She's crying, and Matthew's family is crying too, and telling her they'll always make her welcome. This scene made me tear up too. It was so touching, and Matthew's family is really amazing. Then the grandma says, someday you can do this with your kids, referring to the tradition of making Christmas ornaments. Greta looks concerned because, as she's hinted in past confessionals, she's not sure she wants kids. The mom says she hopes there will be lots of babies. Greta tells them when they first met, they both really wanted kids, but that she's had a lot of anxiety about the idea lately, and can't tell if it's just a phase. The mom looks disappointed. You can see Greta can sense this, and she tells the mom she knows Matthew wants kids, and that he'd be an amazing father. The mom is understanding, and says with Greta's upbringing, and not having a good role model, she can see how being a mother herself would be a big deal. In her confessional, she says she's always hoped she'd have grandchildren, but understands it's a big decision. She's also sad because she knows this sort of thing could break up a relationship. In her confessional, Greta says she doesn't want to ruin their perfect image of her, but she doesn't want to get their hopes up for something that might not happen. She says the last time she talked with Matthew about kids was 6 months ago, and they agreed then that they wanted them. But says when thinking about it recently, she feels conflicted and is concerned about bringing this up to Matthew, since it could affect their relationship. Later, Greta and Matthew are going to an apple orchard. He tells her, who knew 3 years after we met on a vegan dating app that we'd be here having these amazing experiences. She tells him she's happy he loves animals as much as she does. He says he feels the same and thanks her for being in his life, which was an unexpected moment of niceness from him. She tells him she's been having anxiety lately, since she's been wanting to tell him something, but wasn't sure if she was just going through a phase or not. He naturally looks concerned, and she says she's unsure if she wants kids anymore. He says this is a bombshell. She says she's struggling because he'd be a great dad. He says he definitely wants kids and wanted them with her because she's the one for him. He asks her, do you think the reason you don't want kids is because you had a difficult childhood? She says no, that her childhood is one of the reasons she would want kids, because that would help create a childhood she couldn't have. In his confessional, he says they've talked about having kids lots of times, even down to what they'd name them, and he's not sure where this came from. She tells him at first she was sure about kids, but started to realize what her life would be like with a child. She says having a kid would be a deterrent to being the advocate for animals she wants to be. He says her ability to give her kids the childhood she couldn't have would be a great thing. He says, if you don't have the ability to be a mother, I'm willing to do 200% as a father. He seemed a little more human in this episode, and I felt sorry for him, since it was a sudden change for her to not want kids, after recently telling him she did. But I also can't help but see they have a weird dynamic that I don't think will work in the long run. This seemed like one of the few times Matthew has been reasonable with Greta, and not giving her mean looks or being passive-aggressive. I just don't think they have a good situation, and I'm not sure why they're trying to make it work. I get the idea you'd want to be with someone who agrees with your values, like how they both want to advocate for animals. But it's important to be with someone who's a good fit, and doesn't give you hostile looks. And Matthew doesn't fit that bill. So I just don't see it for these two right now. However, I do like his family, and since she needs a family of her own, I wish she could just move in with them and her cat. Anyway, that's it for this video. I'm curious what you guys think, so please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.